Distinguished guests, welcome to the 96th International Annual Convention and Conference of the International Propeller Club of the United States. Or should I say, καλώς ήρθατε στην Ελλάδα, καλώς ήρθατε στην Αθήνα, since this year's convention is hosted by the International Propeller Club of the United States, Port of Piraeus, once again after a successful global event that happened here in 2007. Propeller Club Port of Piraeus was founded in Greece back in 1935 and is the oldest active club outside the United States, as well as the largest propeller club in the world in terms of membership. The theme of this year's conference, as you see here, is We Are Together, a clear reference to this being our first truly global gathering following the global COVID pandemic. This theme also captures the essential spirit and the mission of this club, which is to work together for the future of shipping industry worldwide. The entire worldwide network of the Propeller Club, consisting of 72 clubs in ports around the world, is gathered here today. Together, as our theme, we will set the tone for this three-day event that starts today and will go until Thursday, and is dedicated to news and developments, opportunities, challenges, and concerns related to the future of global shipping. Distinguished speakers and experts will address all major issues and will engage in a constructive dialogue, setting light on pivotal issues such as the evolution of port management and logistics, navigating the next stage of the shipping evolution driven by digitalization, human resources, maritime education and training, sustainability, and decarbonization. We are truly honored by your presence here today for this special event, not only for the shipping industry, but for the country of Greece as well. On behalf of the Propeller Club, Port of Piraeus, I would like to give some special thanks to the supporters of this convention. I will start with our lead diamond supporter, American P&I Club. Then our platinum supporters. Yes, a round of applause, please. Our platinum supporters, Dryalog and PPG. Our gold supporters, the Applus Group, Franman, Maritime Agreement Worldwide Services, Propeller Club, Port of Charleston, Sekaving, Wingon Street, and last but not least, our silver supporters, American Bureau of Shipping, Chartwell Maritime SA, Diana Shipping Services, Furuno Elas, Yotun, Latsko Shipping Limited, M Maritime, Marine Group, Synergy, the Marshall Islands Registry, and VSIPs. So thank you all. A big round of applause to all of our supporters. And I think enough with the introductions. It's time for our welcomes. So I would like to call up on stage Mr. Costis Frangoulis, President of the Propeller Club, Port of Piraeus, and Chairman of the Organizing Committee.
Welcome. Καλώς ήρθατε. It's been 2 years we've been waiting for this because the first date for the convention was September 2020. So at least in Greek they say τα καλά πράγματα αργούν να γίνουν. Dear Minister of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy, dear Deputy Minister, dear Ambassador of the United States, dear representatives of the Greek and European parliaments and the United States Senate, dear Commandant of the Hellenic Coast Guard, dear President of the Union of Greek Ship Owners, dear International Propeller Club President, dear Propeller Club delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly a pleasure and a great honor to welcome you to the 96th International Convention and Conference of the International Propeller Club of the United States. This is a very special occasion for me, especially as President of the Propeller Club Board of Piraeus and the Organizing Committee. So let me extend an especially warm welcome on behalf of our Board of Governors, our members, and our Organizing Committee, who have put so much hard work into ensuring the success of this convention. We are together, and I'm confident that by being together over the next few days, we will leave our mark on shipping and indeed on the future. Shipping, as you all know, is a massive industry in Greece. No doubt, together, the next few days will also leave a mark on Greece. But it is my sincere hope that this will be a memorable few days for each and every one of you. I hope that this beautiful and historical city will leave its mark on you together with that legendary Greek hospitality which we call philoxenia. The wonderful thing about the Greek language, by the way, is the way that words break up into its component parts. And philoxenia is a wonderful example of this. Philo refers to love and friendship. Xenia refers to foreign. So philoxenia refers to love or friendship towards the foreigners. I hope I didn't sound like the father at a Greek big fat wedding with this. This is a significant convention for the International Propeller Club, for the shipping industry, for Greece. This significance is a direct reflection on the role that shipping plays and the value the worldwide network of the Propeller Club contributes to the maritime sector and global industries generally. We are a worldwide network that has truly evolved dynamically. The world is changing at an ever-increasing rate. We need to keep evolving dynamically. Indeed, we need to lead the change. We, as the International Propeller Club, should be illuminating the path to the future. And that gets me to the theme of this year's convention. We are together. This is a clear and direct reference to this convention as the first following the global COVID pandemic that kept us apart during recent years. Together for shipping and together for future communicate the fundamental mission of the club, working together in the interests of shipping and the future of our industry worldwide, driving change, preparing to the future. My sincere thanks and appreciation go to the International Propeller Club, to the Board of Governors of our club, and especially to our organizing committee for their hard work and dedication in making this convention a reality. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all participants, speakers and panelists, those who have traveled from all over the world to join us here in Athens, as well as those from Greece. It is ultimately the individual participation of each and every one of you that will make this a successful convention. My warm thanks to the American Club as a lead supporter, as well as to all our supporters. Without you, none of this would have been possible. I sincerely hope that our convention provides insight and perspective into the numerous challenges we face in our industry. More than anything, I believe that we will further strengthen the bonds that exist between us, giving us the power and the inspiration to better face the future and continue our vital work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frangoulis. Next, I would like to call up on stage the President of the International Propeller Club of the United States, Mr. Jim Patti.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and greetings from the International Propeller Club, our ports and members from throughout the world. It is, of course, a great honor to have with us today so many distinguished leaders from government and from our industry. Your participation in our event is a clear recognition of the importance of our industry to Greece and to the world's economy, and demonstrates the high regard and esteem in which the Propeller Club Port of Piraeus, its president, Costis Frangoulis, and its officers, board, and members are held. Thank you again for your attendance, and more importantly, for your friendship and support. Before I go any further, I do want to express the appreciation of the International Propeller Club to the Port of Piraeus, to Costis and his incredible team, who have put this convention and conference together. The venue is perfect. The slate of keynote speakers and panelists is beyond impressive, and I know we will all learn a great deal from their experience and expertise. And the overall program will not only be informative, but enjoyable. As you have heard, the theme of our convention is We Are Together, and it is truly wonderful to be together in person and to have the opportunity to interact with colleagues from around the world and from all segments of our industry. It has been a difficult 2 years for all of us, personally and professionally, and we are, in many respects, still dealing with the impact of COVID and its all too many variants. Every country represented here has been affected by the pandemic, and unfortunately, too many of us have suffered the loss of friends and family members to COVID, as well as colleagues whose losses will be long felt throughout our industry. It is no surprise that it has been us, those who are directly or indirectly involved in the maritime industry, who were looked to and counted upon to respond to these unprecedented issues and problems so that our industry would be able to continue to support domestic and international commerce and to continue to meet the demands of importers, exporters, and the consumer. And what we quickly learned is that these problems could not be addressed or resolved in isolation. They had to be approached from the perspective of and with input from each of the numerous distinct but interrelated segments that make up our industry. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact the value of the International Propeller Club and our local Propeller Club ports. No organization of its kind has a membership that represents so many diverse components of our industry as we do. To those who question why belong to the Propeller Club, it is the Propeller Club that provides the most inclusive forum for the discussion of critical maritime issues and the development of rational, meaningful, effective solutions. No other organization provides the opportunity for each of its members in each of our Propeller Club ports from every segment of our industry to interact with colleagues and to work together as one to respond to the ever-changing demands facing the international shipping community. This was clearly evident over the past 2 years and will be evident as our speakers and panelists discuss the significant issues we face going forward. I encourage all of you to take advantage of this opportunity this week to reach out to people you may not know, people who have experience and expertise in a segment of the maritime industry that is different from yours. I promise it will be worth your time and effort. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Patti. We're truly honored to have with us today the Minister of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy, Mr. Giannis Plakiotakis, which I would like to call up on stage for his welcome.
Honorable Ambassador of the United States in Athens, dear Deputy Minister of Maritime Affairs, dear President of the Union of Greek Ship Owners, dear President of the International Propeller Club, dear members of the Greek and European Parliament, dear President, of course, who is our host after all, Mr. Frangoulis, the President of the Greek Propeller Club. Ladies and gentlemen, it fills me with great pleasure and optimism to attend the 96th Propeller Club World Class Congress, as it will be the first global meeting after 2 difficult years of COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing restrictions. It is equally important and significant to me that this meeting is hosted by the International Propeller Club of the United States, Piraeus, the oldest outside the United States, founded back in 1935, and the largest in the world in terms of membership. This special maritime gathering attempts to set the tone for the global shipping industry in the post-COVID era, as by all indications we are now very close to the end of the pandemic alert. After 2 difficult years that created strong pressures in several sectors of the global shipping industry, markets are showing signs of recovery, and in some cases, such as in sea tourism and cruise, are surpassing previous record years. It is notable that after the summer quarter and based on bookings for September, a total of 3,420 cruise ships arrival are expected in Greek ports, which corresponds to approximately 3.5 million passengers. These numbers are close to 2019, when no health protocols applied. In terms of occupancy, for mega cruisers, it is at 50 to 60%, while for smaller ships, it reaches 85% on average. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has accelerated new challenges and new realities that all of us in the shipping industry are called upon to manage, each our own domain of responsibility. The adaptation and transition to green shipping with a reduced environmental footprint and the development of technology in ships and maritime transport are particularly critical areas that require common orientation and global cooperation. That is why the motto of this year's conference, "We are together," gives a clear indication of how we all need to move forward with sole aim of progress and development of shipping at all levels. Green, ladies and gentlemen, remains still the largest ship-owning nation, with a fleet that broke the threshold of 5,000 ocean-going vessels. Greek ship owners control 21% of global deadweight tonnage, almost 32% of the world oil tanker fleet, and 23% of the world liquefied natural gas carriers, and 25% of bulk carriers. The Greek-owned fleet reliably serves the world needs of mass maritime transportation, engaging mostly in the mass transportation of industrial, energy, and nutritional goods in the bulk trans sector. It's no exaggeration to state that Greek shipping is an essential factor for the world economy to keep moving. When it comes to LNG, the major role of the Greek fleet in both LNG transportation, not least from the US those days, as well in storage through FSRUs as a part of the European Union energy independence, both in Greece and in other European Union countries, is widely recognized alongside the strategic importance of our port shipping. Regarding the critical and most complicated challenge of shipping nowadays, decarbonization at European Union level, our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, brought forward the absolute need to coordinate the different stakeholders in the decarbonization pathway. In the same vein, we need to look closely into the availability of alternative fuels as energy hubs global approach, at least in the biggest ports around the globe. Internally, we are in parallel preparing a comprehensive study to assess the options for our coastal fleet, which is a crucial issue for social and territorial cohesion. As this global effort requires the collaboration of out-of-sector stakeholders, the responsibilities and the enabling framework must address the right entities. It is our duty to regulate the right entities at the right time, following the fundamental principles such as the polluter pays one. The Russian invasion, ladies and gentlemen, in Ukraine has not left shipping unaffected. However, we managed to mitigate the negative consequences, starting from gradually restoring trade, safety, and security in the Black Sea. At the same time, Greece has always advocated the need for legal clarity and for a global approach, minimizing competitive distortion when it came to trade restrictions. Last but not least, we also investigate actions to prepare our human capital for the transition. Dear all, I have saved for the end of my reference to the most, to my opinion, to the most important crisis that our shipping industry will have to face in the years to come. This is no other than the shortage of human resources that all studies predict. The need to strengthen and consolidate marine education in Greece is now imperative, as in order to meet the needs that have been created, some 3,500 seafarers per year will be needed for the next 20 years. In the last year alone, the Greek-owned fleet has grown by about 7%, which confirms that the consolidation of the Greek shipping in terms of capacity does not go in hand with the availability of new seafarers. And this is something, of course, that needs to change. On the domain of marine training, the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy has invested European funds from the European Social Fund with the support of the NSRF staff structure, more than 13 million euros in equipment at the merchant marine academies, while supporting the practical training of students for the first and second, this is new, the second training voyage, which is very important for gaining experience. In addition, more than 200 million in investments for marine education for Greece are planned for the next programming period. Ladies and gentlemen, with these few thoughts, I would like to point out that I am confident that our first face-to-face meeting after 2 years will be a complete success. Useful opinions will be heard, all the necessary exchange of views and future outlook will take place, which makes the Propeller Club an important reservoir of ideas spanning the whole spectrum of shipping activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Plakiotakis. Thank you. We're also very honored to have with us today His Excellency Mr. George James Tsunis, Ambassador of the United States Embassy in Greece, whom I would like to also call up on stage for his welcome.
Kalispera Propeller Club! Esteemed members of the Propeller Club and friends, as honorary president of the International Propeller Club, this is essentially the only duty that I have, is to welcome you here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 96th Annual International Conference in Athens. Είναι μεγάλη χαρά και τιμή μου να είμαι μαζί σας. Είναι ακόμα μεγάλη χαρά και τιμή μου να είμαι με τον φίλο μου τον Costis. Δεν χρειάζεται να πω το επίθετο το όνομα. You know, he's like Madonna. Just say Costis. Everyone knows who he is. But it's nice to see you. I would like to congratulate this engagement as well as this deep friendship with so many members of our embassy that has helped strengthen U.S.-Greece relations. I have the utmost confidence in my friend Costis and his team to have put together a world-class event for you, one that will forge friendships and create business opportunities. This industry and those who depend on it will all be better off of the result. For a century, the Propeller Club has supported our multifaceted maritime relationships, building bridges between the United States and the global shipping community. From the beginning in New York 100 years ago to now over 72 ports, including 30 in foreign cities, the Propeller Club is truly a global organization. And might I point out yet again, this is the largest propeller club in the world, and Greece has the largest fleet in the world. I'm particularly proud of that. I may be American, but I am an American of Hellenic descent, so I do take some pride in this. Propeller clubs across the world play a key role in formulating policies that help sustain privately owned merchant marine fleets that are so essential for global commerce. My understanding is north of 90% of global trade takes place with these ships, and think about where we would be without them. With roughly 21% of the global fleet Greek-owned or flagged, these issues are not just of utmost importance for Greece, but the broader communities these vessels serve throughout the world. With Greece as the global maritime leader, I cannot think of a better place to have this conference or a more fitting theme, we are together. Now, I have to say, where I come from, Touleni, είμαστε όλοι μαζί. But, you know, we are together is a great theme. We are facing unprecedented global challenges, and only together we will prevail against these. An unprovoked war against Ukraine continues to disrupt global shipping, and we must work together, business and government, to hold Russia accountable. As custodians of democracy, we have an obligation to protect the democratic values that unite us, the international rules-based order that stability and prosperity is based upon. The actions we collectively take now will determine the world that our children live in. And folks, this is very simple. We're either going to choose democracy or autocracy. It's as simple as that. And I know there's a lot of fatigue, and I know sometimes Ukraine seems a long way away. But 2 weeks ago, my embassy and the metropolis of Lamia sponsored a summer camp for 85 Ukrainian orphans. I spent the day there, and suddenly Ukraine doesn't feel so far away. So, Ligo Korayo se parakalo, this is important work, and at no time has evil triumphed over good. We must continue to stick together as an international community and to say to Mr. Putin, this is not acceptable, this will not stand, and this will never happen again to every country. We're facing many challenges. I know we're all familiar with the challenges that climate change presents us. Former Secretary Kerry was in Greece for a couple of days. I had the honor of taking him to, I couldn't keep up with him, candidly. He's 25 years older than me, and he ran me into the ground. We went to Sunya. We met every single minister. But most importantly, we met the leadership of the Greek maritime industry. And it's a very important industry, and they provided a lot of very concrete ideas that were very responsible in sitting down with the secretary and saying, look, these are the practical things the industry is doing. These are the things that are yet to be done. And this is the area of cooperation that we can work together to solve some of these challenges. I have to tell you, I was so proud of the meeting, because it was not the typical démarche, you have to do this. And they came with concrete solutions. They understood that there was a problem that needed to be solved, and they wanted to be part of the solution. They were very, very responsible, and that's very rare. And I got to tell you, the Secretary was very impressed with the leadership of your community, because you're always best practices and you're always ahead of the curve. And I wanted to just point that out to everyone here today. I'd like to thank all of you for your commitment to public service, because you have an important role to play. As a business person, I strongly believe that we all need to give back, especially those that are blessed. We have an obligation to our community in leaving this world a better place than we found it for future generations. In Hebrew school, they will teach you tikkun olam, to repair the world, one person, one situation at a time. And we need to work together to repair the world. Our children, the children of the world, the children of Ukraine deserve no less than that. We owe it to them. I look forward to joining my first Amvir Awards ceremony, which is an incredible celebration of lives saved by the brave crews of Greek-owned vessels that participate in this program. And finally, as U.S. Ambassador, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage all of you to enjoy all the things that Greece has to offer. I believe Greece is one of the most desirable countries to live in. The people, the world-famous philoxenia, the incredible food, the culture, the beautiful waters, the amazing islands. I'm incredibly grateful to my parents who taught me never to forget my roots, tsirizismu. The Hellenic ideals of goodness, kalosini, agapi, and above all, the love of honor, philotimo, which, along with democracy, is some of Greece's greatest gifts to the world. Now, I'm going to go off script for a little bit. I remember years ago when Greece was a punching bag, I couldn't turn on CNBC without looking Greece be ridiculed in the financial press. And it was incredibly unfair. And look at irony. Last year, Greece achieved over an 8% GDP growth, the leader in Europe. In the second quarter, in the second quarter, 7.7% GDP growth, also the leader in Europe. There were many countries that wanted Greece out of the EU. And what's also ironic is as we have an energy scarcity crisis that may lead to a food scarcity crisis, it is Greece who is taking a leading role in solving this, not just for their own country, because we are the gateway here and the infrastructure is there. But Greece is being called upon to solve it for the Balkans as well. So look at where Greece has come in a few short years, that they are helping solve Europe-based problems, that they are the solution. And that is Greece's traditional role. Γιατί εγώ νομίζω καλύτερες μέρες Ελλάδα είναι μπροστά μας. Είναι μπροστά μας. This is a resilient country. This is a country that understands that to be a player on the international world today, cooperation with the United States, with Europe, with the Middle East, with the Balkans, with having strong transatlantic relationships, with being part of the solution is very important. The United States counts on Greece as an indispensable partner in the region because they are reliable, they share our values, they are solutions-based. And it's no secret that the geostrategic importance of Greece has been elevated substantially. I will pledge to you that I will work every day in order to build the strongest bilateral relationship possible, because that serves U.S. interest, it serves Greek interest, and it speaks to regional stability and prosperity in this region. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. Now, for my next task, I will need some help. So I would like to call up on stage the President of the International Propeller Club of the United States, because we have some awards that we have to give. 4, right? Yes. Okay. So I will just name the titles, and then Mr. Patti will take over to explain everything about the awards and, of course, announce the winners. We have the Maritime Person of the Year Award, the Propeller Club of the Year, the Propeller Club Person of the Year, and, last but not least, International President's Award of Excellence. Mr. Patti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to present a number of awards on behalf of the International Propeller Club, and there is no more fitting way to begin than with the International Propeller Club of the United States Maritime Person of the Year Award. This award is presented to an individual who has dedicated him or herself to the advancement of the maritime industry and whose contributions to our industry have been invaluable. The recipients of this award in the past have sometimes been trailblazers, or they have sometimes been recognized leaders in the shipping industry, or they have sometimes dedicated themselves to helping those who are less fortunate or otherwise in need. Rarely do we have the opportunity, as we do today, to honor an individual who is all of these things: a trailblazer, a leader in the shipping industry, and a humanitarian, Melina Travlos. Consider, she recently became the first ever female president of the Union of Greek Ship Owners, demonstrating the high esteem in which she is held by her colleagues, who collectively control more than 20% of the global fleet capacity. At the same time, she runs Neptune Lines and its fleet of pure car and truck carrier vessels. And she is the co-founder of the Greek Ship Owners Social Welfare Company, which has raised more than $80 million to provide food assistance, health and education services, and disaster relief to vulnerable members of Greek society. Please join me in recognizing a trailblazer, a leader, and a humanitarian, Melina Travlos, the recipient of the International Propeller Club's Maritime Person of the Year Award.
Well, I'm so honored. Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you. Minister Plakiotakis, U.S. Ambassador Tsunis, President Patti, President Frangoulis. I don't see here President Pateras. I don't know if he's here. George is here. George is not here. Ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you for your kind words. Once again, I'm so honored to receive the Maritime Person of the Year award. This is a special award by the International Propeller Club of the United States, a club with immense history and worldwide impact, spread in 72 ports. So I'm not only honored, but I'm also touched that I received this award here in my country, in Greece, where the oldest active, as well as the largest club, the Propeller Club of Piraeus, operates. Shipping has always been a bridge of communication and a constructive link of cooperation between Greece and the United States of America. The most crucial factor in serving our industry is to have faith in ourselves, to be fully dedicated in our vision, and to be committed in our duty. This is my belief. Serving shipping is a lifetime duty. As member of the Neptune family, as board member, and now as the president of Union of Greek Ship Owners, I have always been guided by the vision of an innovative, united, and effective maritime community. The title of this year's conference is "We Are Together." This is a statement to me. Togetherness is the key to succeed in the fast-changing shipping environment. By remaining united, joining forces, and inspiring the new generation, we will provoke great changes. We are together, so all together we will lead the new era. Thank you again, and I wish you a productive conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next award is to the Propeller Club Port of the Year. Past recipients, including the Port of Piraeus, last year's recipient, have set themselves apart through their support for the maritime industry, their involvement with their community, and their support of various charitable organizations. And this year's recipient is no different. Throughout this past year, and under the leadership of their president, Tosca Pinder, and their officers and board, the Propeller Club Port of Seattle, one of our oldest propeller clubs, has thrived, enabling their members to interact through various virtual and outdoor events and increasing their membership to more than 200. Despite the financial challenges presented by the pandemic, the Propeller Club Port of Seattle continued its community support, contributing to maritime-related nonprofits, including the Seattle Mission to Seafarers and the Sea Scouts. In recognition of their ongoing service to the maritime industry in the Puget Sound region and their support for the objectives and programs of the International Propeller Club, I am pleased to present the Propeller Club Port of the Year Award to the Port of Seattle and would ask their Vice President, Heather Hogland, to come forward and accept the award.
This is a lot heavier than it looks. Just want to say thank you. I'm so honored and full of gratitude to meet all of you. This is my first Propeller Club conference, so the bar is set very high. I wanted to just share that I share this award with all of our hardworking board members, particularly past President Sarah Scherer, Tosca Pindar. I also just want to say this is such a huge honor on behalf of my grandparents, great-grandparents, and parents who all were involved in Seattle Maritime over these generations. It's a huge honor, and I want to invite all of you to come to Seattle and see our dynamic maritime community. Thank you.
Our next award is the Propeller Club Member of the Year. This award is given annually to the individual who has demonstrated an unwavering, strong commitment to the Propeller Club and who, through his or her actions, has helped to build and promote our organization. This year's recipient, selected by the committee from a long list of worthy and deserving candidates, has a record of leadership and support that is hard to match. Gerardo Tiedeman is one of the first founders of the Propeller Club of the Basque Country, Port of Bilbao, and served as its first president. For most people, that would be enough, but not for Gerardo. His service to the Port of Bilbao and to the International Propeller Club continues today, as he serves as regional vice president for the Iberian region. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the International Propeller Club Member of the Year Award to Mr. Gerardo Tiedeman.
Just very few words. I acknowledge with thanks this award, which I definitely did not expect. I just tried to do my work within the organization of the Bilbao Propeller Club and within the organization of the Iberia Propeller Clubs. I never expected that I was doing something special. And I would definitely like to accept this award in the name of each and every member of the Propeller family, because they are all contributing with a piece of grain to the growing of this marvelous organization. Thanks to the organizing, the Piraeus Athens Club, thanks to the International Board of Directors of the club, and I'm sure that we all enjoy this year's International Convention. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, normally, the awards that have so far been presented would represent the customary scope of International Propeller Club awards. That is until today. And today, for the first time, I will be presenting the International President's Special Award of Excellence. It will come as no surprise to any of you in the room today that the recipient of this first time ever special award are the officers, board, and members of the Propeller Club Port of Piraeus. You all know the facts and figures better than I do, but just consider, over this past year alone, the Port of Piraeus Club has increased its membership by more than 270 individuals, larger than most clubs have overall. Their membership today, more than 740, making, as you have heard, the Port of Piraeus the largest propeller club in our organization. They have, over the past year, made approximately 19 charitable donations and awarded approximately 16 scholarships with a total value of well more than 100,000 euros. They have recently purchased their own offices and headquarters, situated in the heart of Piraeus. And I should add, they have accomplished all this and more, while at the same time Costis and his colleagues were planning this convention and conference. Everyone associated in any way with the Port of Piraeus Club should be enormously proud of what you have achieved, not only during this past year, but throughout your club's history. You have set a standard that will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for anyone else to meet. I'm extremely proud and privileged to present the first International President's Special Award of Excellence to the officers, board, and members of the Propeller Club of the United States, Port of Piraeus, and would ask its president, Costis Frangoulis, to come forward to accept the award.
President Patti, I would like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude. It's a great honor for us. This award is going to be shared in 746 pieces because the club is not the board, it's not the president, it's the members. So I would like to very briefly say that this club has a great history, goes back to 1935. So everybody who serves on the boards, and we have a great responsibility to continue keeping the club at its top, and we owe this to every member, because we, the presidents and the board governors, we come and go. And I have to also say that we're also fortunate, and there's another key to our success, and I'm trying to be humble. We all live and operate in this great city with the port of Piraeus next, where it's the center of shipping, where we are the champions worldwide. The president of the union is sitting next to me. So we cannot stay behind. The bar is too high, and we have to keep it, and we have to excel and try and give our utmost every day, and that's what we do. That's what I'm doing, and that's what the Propeller Club Port of Piraeus is going to continue being on the top. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our awards presentation. Thank you all very much again for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Patti. A round of applause for Mr. Patti. Can we have all the winners on stage for a picture, please? Another round of applause for our winners, please. Thank you. Thank you all and congratulations. We will move on with our keynote speaker for today, Mr. Economides, world-renowned brand strategist. He's a highly experienced global brand and marketing professional, an honorary member of the Propeller Club Port of Piraeus since 2018. Please welcome Mr. Economides.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Hi, everybody. And very special welcome, especially to our guests from all over the world, to this beautiful city called Athens. Wonderful to have you here. It's a great honor for me to be here today. I'm an honorary member of this amazing club since 2018 at a wonderful ceremony which took place on the Liberty ship down in Piraeus harbor. And I'm ever grateful for that. I was given the Members Award of Excellence. I'm a very lucky guy. I work with some incredible clients all over the world. One of them is this company up here, which is the shipbuilding company which used to belong to Mr. Theodore Angelopoulos, and he sold that in 2010. I did some branding work with them starting back in 2014, I guess, and at the time OceanCo was one of the top 3 shipbuilders, yacht builders in the world, but the new owner was very, very clear he wanted the #1 position. I've done a lot of work with them over the years, and a lot of that work gets me into very close contact with Monaco. This, by the way, is one of the OceanCo boats. That's about 110 meters. They're huge. They really are massive. I'm involved in this project called Next, which is all about taking boats like that, which are designed for an older generation, and making sure that we can sell boats to a new generation of billionaires. So I work with a group of people, and we advise OceanCo on all sorts of issues relating to culture and technology and stuff like that. And here's some of the work that's emerging. That over there is Pininfarina. These have not been built, these are concepts right now. And I do a lot of work with these guys in Monaco. Monaco has done something. They've established what they call the Monaco Yachting Cluster. And what they say is that they want Monaco to become the capital of advanced yachting. To raise awareness locally about the importance of yachting for Monaco, but to build influence globally on the importance of Monaco for yachting. And here is what the Prince says. From a simple vision to raise awareness among local players, it quickly became apparent that this approach was an obvious one for the Principality. I'm convinced of the efficacy of collectively signing up to the Monaco Capital of Advanced Yachting approach to formalize our commitment through this brand as a tool to leverage international influence. Big, visionary project. Interesting. I firmly believe that the city we're in should be the capital of global shipping. It is the capital of global shipping. But we need to raise awareness locally, and we need to build influence globally. And I can't think of a better group of people than the people in this room to do just that. Imagine the full potential impact we can have on future generations. The fact that Greeks dominate shipping is one of the best kept secrets in the world. It needs to be revealed. Just a couple of words about myself. That's where I grew up, down in South Africa, which is why people in this country laugh at my Greek. It's quite amusing sometimes. And I went to university in Cape Town, very beautiful city. And my university was right behind that little mountain on the left-hand side. That's Table Mountain in the middle, by the way, stunningly beautiful city. And although I was living in that beautiful place, there's only one place I wanted to be. I wanted to be a big deal on Madison Avenue. And when I said that to my father, he said to me, "Where the hell is that?" So I explained it to him. And he looked at me with a huge smile on his face, and he said, "Go and show them who we are." And off I went. And I joined Pepsi Cola in South Africa. I then joined McCann Erickson in South Africa, very large global advertising agency. They sent me to Hong Kong. I'm in my office in Hong Kong one day, and this guy calls me up from New York And he says to me, "You're Greek, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you speak Greek?" I said, "Fluently." I couldn't speak a word. And they sent me to Greece as the CEO of the company here in Athens. And I learned Greek, kind of. I ordered mia salata me bazzouria once. For those who don't understand Greek, that's a salad with window shutters. I meant a beetroot salad. From here I went to Mexico. They thought my name was Economies. And from there I finally made it to New York, and I was a big deal on Madison Avenue working for McCann Erickson Worldwide as Director of Worldwide Client Services in New York. That was a client of mine, the former CMO of the Coca-Cola Company. I handled Coca-Cola's advertising around the world. Very famous fellow called Sergio Zeman. We used to call him the Ayacola. He was a very nasty individual, but really smart. That's a book he wrote, by the way, during the 90s, well worth reading. I then joined TBWA Worldwide in New York, founded by a Greek, by the way, from Kalamata, a guy called Bill Tragos, Vasilis Tragos, and there I had the very good fortune to work with that fellow over there, Steve Jobs. 1997, Apple was bankrupt, and we were given the task of injecting life back into Apple. I'll talk about that because there's a lot of relevance to us inside there. I then moved back to this incredible city. The pool was too strong, and I've been living here ever since. 2004, we won the Euro Cup. Remarkable. I'll never forget that day. At Kalimarmaro when the team came back. Was anybody there? It was unbelievable. I'll never, ever forget it. And a few months later, there was that. And that's what Reuters said. Athens was the flame that lit up the world. A couple of months later, the flames had changed, unfortunately. Athens was literally up in flames. We started entering a very deep crisis. As we all know, we've lived through it. And here's some of the stuff that we'd see all over the place. And this is what we'd see happening in Syntagma Square. And the brain drain, which cost this country dearly. Lots and lots of really smart people disappearing. 2019, I really felt that we were on the brink of a great recovery. I really felt it very, very strongly. And I'm sure many other people in this room did. And all of a sudden, this happened. 2020. All of a sudden, that happened. But an American friend said to me, he said, "You know something, Peter? The whole world is in crisis right now. But Greeks have a distinct advantage." I said, "David, what the hell is that?" And he said, 5 years of practice, 10 years of practice, excuse me. And he was absolutely right. I want to trace some of those 10 years very quickly. Look at what happened to general unemployment in this country between 2010 and on this side, our latest estimates for 2022 for August 2022. Look at that, 27.5% in 2013, 26.5% in 2014. But worse than that, look at youth unemployment. It's shocking. It's frightening. Look at those numbers, 58%. Even today, we're sitting at 29%. It's huge. Back in 2011, I gave a talk, 2012 actually, where I spoke about γίνεται. I spoke about the fact that it can be done, that you can do it. Just get rid of the then word, I said. And that talk went absolutely viral. I'm very happy to say, because I know that I've influenced a lot of young kids with it. I know that. At the same time, I started getting involved with startups. There was a remarkable initiative in this country at the time from the Dutch ambassador, a fellow called Jan Versteeg, and he gave up a large part of the embassy and started something called the Orange Grove. where it was an incubator, startup incubator, it was just remarkable. And I called it vitamin C for startups, and that's exactly what it was. 250 startups went through there. Startups suddenly became part of youth culture in this country, which was phenomenal, phenomenal. And today you've got unicorns coming out of Greece, which is quite remarkable. Companies with value in excess of 1 billion. Beat, the taxi company. Scrooge, Blue Ground, Viva Wallet, which was sold recently for a couple of billion. Hellas Direct, an insurance company. Workable, Epignosi, and Persado. All of those are unicorns. We didn't even know what the word meant a couple of years ago. It's remarkable what happened during these last 10 years. Shipping. Shipping. Back in 2012, I was invited to give a talk to the Swedish club up in Gothenburg, the insurance group. And I said to myself, what's a branding guy going to talk about shipping? What's it got to do with me? And I sat down at my desk and I said, what am I going to speak about? And I suddenly realized that all that stuff around me wouldn't have been there without ships. And a light suddenly went on. People think about shopping. They don't think about shipping. And that is so, so true. I live on the seaside, outside one of the busiest ports in the world. I've got ships cruising past every day. I don't see them. I don't see them. Without shipping, there is no shopping. Simple, hard reality. And I made this little video.
When you put your arms around me, I get
We don't think about that, but it is so true. It is so true. More than 20%, approximately 20% of the world's fleet is under Greek ownership. Wow. Wow. Imagine the full potential impact on future generations. We Greeks don't really know that. We don't understand it. We don't feel it. We don't understand the significance of it. And we should. We need to focus Greek attention on shipping. We need to focus world attention on Greek shipping. We need to encourage the development of the entire ecosystem around shipping. It's a massive ecosystem, if you think about it. Huge. And we can do that through owners, a registry, education, careers, naval architecture, technology, fuel technology, digital technology. We're looking at the future, guys. Building, maintenance, finance, ancillary services, and the exportation of knowledge and services. That list goes on. It's huge. There's an entire economic ecosystem around shipping. Huge. And by the way, the super yacht business sits right next to it. We've got the best cruising waters in the world. All those ships based in Monaco, where do they go every summer? I once said, and I firmly believe this, Greece can and should be the west coast of Europe. And just like the west coast has got its engine, its motivating engine, which is digital technology, we've got our motivating engine, and it's called shipping. It's a massive motivating engine. I also said Greece should be the apple of the Mediterranean. Talking about Apple, here's to the crazy ones. It's wonderful having these big, hairy, audacious goals. You've got to be crazy to live with those goals. Let's look at some craziness for a second. 1997, Apple was dead. It was bankrupt. This is a statement from the chief technology officer at Microsoft. Apple is dead, he said. That's when Steve Jobs went back to try to save it, to resuscitate it. I met the guy. I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, and I got to work with him, and I'll never forget that first meeting I had with him. Here's what he said: let's make a dent on the universe. He did not say, let's sell more computers. He did not say, let's fix this bankrupt company. He said, let's make a dent on the universe. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Here's to the crazy ones. Misfits, rebels, explorers, the round pegs in the square holes, ones with seatbelts. They're not followers. They have no respect for the status quo. Keep it healthy, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. Anything you can do is important. Because their challenge is and that's how they see them, as the crazy ones. We see them as the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world.
The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. By the way, did you see Maria Callas inside there? There were 2 Greeks at TBWA. We got her in there. We made that commercial in, I believe it was in November of '97. We put that on television sets all over the world. It does not use the word computer once. It talks about a belief and value system. It talks about culture. And it was a huge statement about Apple about this being the heart and soul of Apple. It was expressed through design and technology. It was expressed through architecture, through people, Genius Bar in Apple stores, through community, the seminars that they give in their stores, in everything that Apple ever did. And that's the result. People queuing up. This is the Regent Street shop in London, people queuing up to get the new iPhone, and he has a guy who's lucky enough to be one of the first. And he goes home, and he makes an unboxing video. And he gets 12.5 million views. A video of him unboxing his iPhone. Here's the timeline. Apple was bankrupt in 1997. That's when we launched Think Different. The first iMac came out in January of 98. First iPod in 2001. First Apple Store opened in 2001. The iTunes Store went live in 2003. First iPhone was launched, believe it or not, 2007. The App Store was launched in 2008. The first iPad was launched in 2010, and the rest is history. 2011, Apple became the world's most valuable corporation. And unfortunately, in that year, Steve Jobs also passed away. 2018, Apple became the first company ever to top 1 trillion in value. 2020, 2 trillion. 2022, 3 trillion. It's remarkable, guys. It was bankrupt in 1997. Here you've got a powerful narrative acting as a bridge between what is and what might be. Right? Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels. That's that powerful narrative bridging where you are and where you want to be. And then you've got the connection points. And here's that narrative. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And there is that timeline, driven by that belief and value system. Faithfully driven by that belief and value system. Shipping. Here's a chart with the world's leading ship owners. Number one on the list is Greece, 21% in terms of deadweight. Following that is Japan, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Germany, Korea, Norway, Bermuda, and the USA. By the way, 35% are those combined numbers coming out of Asia. Add to that Korea, and you've got around 40% coming out of Asia. So Asia's got a lot of shipping power, make no mistake. But the Western power clearly is sitting inside Greece. Greece is the capital of global shipping. So 90% of the world's trade comes by ship. 21% of the world's fleet is owned by Greeks. Wow, is all I can say. 18% of the world's goods is shipped on Greek ships. Simple math. Capital of global shipping, absolutely. But we need to make it that. This provides us with the seeds of a powerful narrative acting as a bridge between what is and what might be. It goes right back to that example that I showed you about Apple. We need that narrative. We need a powerful, inspiring narrative that'll get people behind it. Here are the world's leading economies, by the way. No surprise, number one spot, the United States. Number 2, China, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, India, France, Italy, Canada, and Korea. So the United States accounts for 24.4% of global GDP. Wow. Wow. So let's just do something. 24% of the world's GDP is generated by the US, 21% of the world's fleet is owned by Greeks. It's pretty impressive stuff that we're looking at. The world's largest economy and the world's largest transporter. Powerful. Very powerful. That's what I call symbiosis. Greek word, by the way. Very powerful stuff. Imagine the full potential impact on future generations. Thank you very much indeed.
So someone has his birthday, Mr. Michael Berry, so we want to wish you a happy birthday. Can we have the song, please? And the cake.
Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Never understood how someone who stands for good.
Happy birthday again. So, Mr. Vasilakos, the floor is yours. You can start.
And thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. Welcome to the Geopolitics panel of the convention, International Convention of the Propeller Club. I'm Dimitri Vasilakos. I'm the treasurer of the Piraeus chapter of the Propeller Club and ship financier by day. Henry Kissinger, the doyen of all diplomats in the Western world, mentioned at some point that one should not let the urgent take the place of the important. Well, the maritime industry certainly has been bombarded lately with more than a handful of both. The COVID pandemic, the management of its environmental footprint, the technological revolution, the war in Ukraine. We have a panel for each of these during the conference, as you probably know. Today we'll start with a panel that will discuss something that is both urgent and important, and that's the impact of the increasingly volatile geopolitical scene on the shipping industry and its close associate, the energy one. I hope that we'll be able to scratch the surface and get to a bit more depth. But we certainly have a fantastic panel with us today to help us do so. You have the bios of all the panelists on the website of the convention, but very briefly and in alphabetical order, it's my pleasure and honor to have with me Captain Michael Berry, the Defense and Naval Attaché of the US Embassy in Athens, a city where he's serving for the second time, so he's a bit of a veteran of our region. He has also served in a variety of other positions in Europe and in Asia. Mr. George Koumoutsakos MP, a former diplomat and long-standing member of the Greek Parliament, who has both the foreign affairs and the maritime industry very close to his heart. George Margaronis, a well-respected shipping professional with a third of a century hands-on experience, sounds long, in various positions in the shipping industry, the latest of which is CEO of Lasco Shipping, a shipping company with presence in many sectors, but mostly focused on the oil and gas transportation. Dan Tadros, the international jet-setter of our panel, who combines a solid knowledge of both the insurance world and the compliance one, in his role as Chief Operating Officer of the American P&I Club. He oversees day-to-day operations in the US, in Europe, and Asia, hence the jet-setter characters. And last, but almost certainly not least, Professor Aristotelis Diambiris, a professor of international relations and the director of the MSc program of the University of Piraeus, and a specialist in energy diplomacy, the Greek-US relations, and East Med regional dynamics. I think I will join the rest of the panelists. You can hear me, I guess. And start with my first question. Year 2022 started with something that in most minds, European citizens' minds, was probably an impossibility. Probably a foregone conclusion in the minds of forward-thinking political scientists, the war in Ukraine. Geopolitics provide the canvas for, among other things, global commerce, energy trading, and as a result, shipping itself. So, can I ask you, as an introduction to today's discussion, to share with us the big picture of where we're currently standing in terms of global tectonic movements? And since we're located in the East Med, if you have any particular focus in this region, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say that I'm humbled and excited to be not only at this amazing conference, but to be part of such a distinguished panel. So it's a great honor for me. Thank you very much. I'll try to throw out a few things about the big picture because shipping is global. Hence, it cannot but be affected by the big changes that are happening on the realm of geopolitics. And the first thing, you mentioned it, everyone knows about it. We follow it since early February of last year, of this year actually, is the war in Ukraine. The war is unacceptable, it's barbarous, it's murderous, and Ambassador Tsunis said we've got to stick together. The title, We Are Together, this is all actually true as regards the West. The West was supposed to be moribund. The West was supposed to be divided, weak, distracted. Think again. That's not the case. When the American Revolution was starting, Benjamin Franklin famously wrote a letter saying we will either hang all together or we will hang separately. And I don't think the case for the West is that we're going to hang, but we might freeze if we're not together. And the major takeaway, and this is affecting global politics, is the fact that the West is united, and the European Union is actually, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, is actually taking action finally with maybe a little bit too late, but it's never too late, to be honest. And I have to highlight the importance of the United States of America and what is happening right now globally in combating the adverse effects of the war in Ukraine. The second thing that is going on, I think, big picture, again, Ambassador Tsunis said it's autocrats versus Democrats. I will actually allow me to say that the cleavage, from my point of view, is a little bit more sophisticated and complicated because we see a lot of democratic countries having great relations or close relations with countries that are not so democratic. So what is happening here? How can we explain it? Is it just autocrats versus Democrats? In my view, the real cleavage in international politics today is between powers that are revisionist and powers that are status quo. It's not just that countries like Iran or Turkey or China or Russia tend to be autocratic. They also tend to be revisionist. They want to change not just the institutions, but also the norms and the principles that the West, and especially the United States, have instilled globally since the end of World War II. So watch out, not just good guys, bad guys, revisionists versus status quo. I think that helps explain much more in my opinion. Third thing is hard power is back. And this is a little counterintuitive. In fact, hard power had never left world politics, yet the willingness to undertake an old-fashioned invasion of a European country is the ultimate reminder that military power counts. And it is not a coincidence that countries like Greece are rearming or Germany for that matter. So this is yet another consequence, and of course all these are shipped It's not just shopping, it's also armaments and all that are coming via ships. Let me also add that, again, this is a big picture. You will read, and people will argue there's a new Cold War emerging. Okay, it's helpful to say that there's competition, but Cold War, let's see some differences that are going on. I think what is certainly happening is we have renewed great power competition. There's no doubt about that. But the Cold War was more about the military and ideology. Competition today is more technological and economic. Eventually will become, I think, military and more ideological. But right now, the competition is more on the realms of technology. Think microchips. And also, it is emerging, it is dynamic. We have to keep that in mind. Europe was the center of the Cold War. Berlin was the epicenter. Southeast Asia is the center of the new emerging, let's call it Cold War in quotation marks. Taiwan is probably the epicenter. We saw before in the excellent and inspiring presentation how much shipping comes from Asian countries. Well, the new renewed great power competition plays a role right there, and we'll see how that affects trade and shipping. But let me also say that there's something else going on. Politics are global. There was a famous U.S. politician who said all politics are local. But in the 21st century, I think that a lot of the politics are regional. So in the Cold War, you had containment. One size fits all. One policy for the entire globe. It has the virtue of simplicity. 21st century, not so much. We have to go region by region, and maybe later on we can talk a little bit more about what is happening on the energy front in Europe and the East Med. Final point. We started today, you started, Ambassador Tsunis, everyone is mentioning the war in Ukraine. This is a war by choice. There was nothing inevitable about it. This is Putin's war. Plain and simple. Like it, hate it, cheer for him, root for him, condemn him. It was his choice. And so far, doesn't look very good. Russia has been weakened, less Western investment, brain drain, the cost of war, thousands dead, injured, casualties. On the energy front, for now, it's almost as if Russia is becoming an energy vassal state to China, and that might only be the beginning of that kind of a relationship. We have more and more rounds of sanctions. We have experts here. I think the EU has done 6, 7 rounds of sanctions. 6 so far, correct. Travel restrictions to Russians, the military weakness of the country revealed. Russia, because of Mr. Putin's choice, is today less prosperous, less powerful, more autocratic. So there is, I think we all know this in this room, but let me remind you, there's a famous or infamous Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. And these times are interesting, they're turbulent, they're full of uncertainty, but the West is getting together, and this is where the hope lies. Thank you for now.
Thank you for providing this framework. Captain Berry, one of the key attributes of this lovely country we live in is that we're located at crossroads between the Balkans, the Middle East, North Africa. We Greeks pride ourselves on being able to balance our act in this delicate region and making it a bit less volatile than it usually is. You've been reassigned to Greece since a year now, and having already served in Athens back in 1516, position aside, you have a first-hand experience of how Greece is placing itself and managing its regional relationships on behalf of itself and also of its allies. So, as a knowledgeable outsider, in the sense of non-Greek, can we please have your comment on this, how you view Greece within all this region?
Yes. Sure, thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be here, especially with the distinguished panel members here. Thank you for the Propeller Club. Yeah, so interesting times. I was here in 2014, 2016, which was also an interesting time for Greece with what was going on with the migration crisis and the economic crisis. Then I came back last year. So I know this is a substantial change, which started with the Syriza government and continued with the new democracy. So, geography matters, and Greece is in a very interesting neighborhood. If you look at the Balkans up north, I think the last chapter has not been written yet to what will happen up in the Balkans. Libya, Syria, Iraq, and now Ukraine added to the mix. So Greece is really surrounded by an arc. It's more of a circle of instability versus an arc of instability. And so what is Greece doing to promote security and stability in the region? And what I'll highlight is they're working on cooperation. They're cooperating with all the partners that are willing partners that want to cooperate, that want to conduct good neighborly relations. And they go all the way around that arc of instability. So up in the Balkans, they're working with all the countries, Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia. They're doing military exercises with them. They're doing training with them. They do it on a bilateral basis. They do it on a trilateral basis, and they do it on a multilateral basis. And then you look down into the North Africa, the Levant region, and you see Greece participating with Egypt, with Jordan, with Israel. And then you look in the Persian Gulf, the Middle East, they're bringing Israel the UAE and Saudi Arabia to the table. They were doing a lot of training with Ukraine prior to the war, and unfortunately, the Ukrainian military is unable to travel to Greece right now for training. But they are doing this military engagements very similar to how the government is doing the diplomatic engagements. They're sort of, I'll call it military diplomacy. And so Greece has a unique opportunity. They're able to build bridges, sort of similar to what Peter was talking about, between different cultures, different religions, different people. And the most clear example of that is you have Israeli officials and Greek officials and Egypt officials conducting, a trilateral meeting, for example. You have the UAE Air Force participating in training here in Greece, exercising in Greece, with the Israeli Air Force present. And that's something that, 10 years ago was unheard of and never would have happened. But Greece was sort of the motivator behind facilitating these countries that may not have very good diplomatic relations on the diplomatic side, but they were able to start coming together on the military side. And then that leads to greater diplomatic discussions and agreements. So it's very impressive what they're doing on that. They bring the U.S. Often into exercises with Serbia, for example. And so I see Greece as providing stability and security by acting as a stable partner, both to the U.S., to NATO, to the European Union, but also working with a lot of other countries in the region, basically with every country that desires to have good neighborly relations. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Koumoutsakos, a big part of your educational background or your political career, as mentioned, has focused on foreign affairs, and I certainly know your affinity for the maritime sector. Can we please have, following the global and the regional views, how you see Greece navigating with this volatile, challenging, interesting, however you want to call it, environment? And should you wish to make a special mention about the maritime sector, if you want to make a reference to that?
Thank you. Thank you to the Propeller Club for inviting me to participate in such a great event, very timely and very significant. So thank you to both presidents, President Frangoulis and President Patti, for this invitation. To answer your question, let me start by the fundamentals. Greece is a status quo country. I would say a PSP country, peace, stability, prosperity country. That means that we love status quo. That's why we don't like revisionists. And this is the reason why Greece clearly and entirely stood by its allies, instantly condemning Russia's aggression and invasion to Ukraine. We implemented sanctions, as all allies but one did. We provide Ukraine with both humanitarian and military assistance. And this is, I would say, a very significant message that we are disseminating to the region and to the world. We are against revisionists. We are against people who defy international law and international rules. Being a status quo country does not mean that we are not an ambitious country. We are a status quo, an ambitious country. That's why in the last 3 years, we made a lot of progress, both diplomatically, economically, and in the field of energy. So I would like to mention several of our decisions that I think are game changer in the Eastern Mediterranean. First of all, we signed a maritime agreement with Egypt. We delimited our exclusive economic zone, which allows us to drill both oil and gas in the region. We signed an agreement, a maritime agreement with Italy as well, expanding our territorial waters to 12 nautical miles, the western part of the country. We signed a French-Greece defense agreement, a very important one, which includes a mutual assistance clause. That means if one of the countries is in danger, the other comes to give its assistance and support. But the most important of the developments regarding our security agreement nexus is the agreement that we signed and we ratified recently with the United States of America. The famous MDCA. M stands for mutual, D for defense, C for cooperation, and A for agreement, MDCA. A very important defense agreement. In this agreement, we expand the number of the facilitations that we are giving to and we share with our ally, United States, and with NATO. And there is a qualitative step forward, which is our cooperation in the Alexandroupolis port. Probably we are going to touch a little bit on the role of Alexandroupolis later on in our discussion. And this is not all. We have broadened and deepened our cooperation with countries of the region like Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and we have established now a system, I would say a system, of cooperation regional schemes, in all of which the United States has given its support and encouragement. That's why we can say that we have a 3+1 agreement, 3+1 cooperation. The 3 is Greece, Israel, Cyprus, +1, which is United States of America. The same goes for Egypt. I would say that we are following in the region what one could say the 3 Ds cooperation, the 3 democracies of the region, in the region, Greece, Cyprus, Israel. But it's not only these are the latest developments, very important ones in the security and defense field. But this is not all. The other very important field on which we need to cooperate, we come together, is energy. Our energy policy, both our energy diplomacy and our policy, is very much based on a mantra which is high security supply, low cost energy, and viable forward-looking sustainability. Based on this mantra, we have upgraded our LNG terminal in the Revithousa island. We are in the phase of creating a system of floating storage regasification units, the FSRUs, in the north part of Alexandroupoli, and there are two more that are under construction. The Dioriga gas, close to Corinth, and the next is the FSRU Thessaloniki in Thessaloniki. So we are increasing the FSRU in their role in securing energy diversification and energy routes. And this is not all. We have the transatlantic gas pipeline, the famous TAP, connecting east with the west through Greece. We are in the center of the southern gas corridor. And of course, we are now creating the vertical interconnectors with Bulgaria and North Macedonia, so that we provide an increasing support to Europe in a very difficult moment when it comes to energy security. So this is the bird's eye view concerning Greece's role in the region and the potential that we have, including the extremely important and dynamic shipping sector. On this, I won't compete with Peter Economides, because that would be a great mistake for me. So I leave everything on this particular part to what Peter Economides has so inspiringly and breathtakingly presented to us. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that, Mr. Koumoutsakos. Geopolitics may provide the broader canvas, but when it comes to actually doing business, an actual framework is required to translate these dynamics to actionable, enforceable actions. A large part of this framework is provided by the sanctions that the international blocs like the US, the EU, or China are imposing. And the insurance industry in shipping is a major channel through which these rules are fed through to the system. Further to the obvious difficulty of conjugating a global industry like shipping with multiple and sometimes conflicting set of rules, can I ask Dan to please share with us the current picture and the evolutionary dynamics, to the extent you can have a view on that, because it seems sometimes quite aberrant the way they move, of the sanction regime, or rather regimes, with an S. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello? There it is. Thank you. Thank you to the Propeller Club of Piraeus and to the International Propeller Club for inviting me to be on this distinguished panel. And, you know, the theme of "We Are Together" is very interesting to me, because although the countries, the Western countries, as the good professor said, are all together when it comes to dealing with Russia, when it comes to sanctions, they're anything but together, okay? For years, sanctions were really a baby of the United States, and OFAC was the one that was issuing the pronouncements and was actually doing the enforcement. Now, you have sanctions from Europe, different sanctions from the United Kingdom, Switzerland, Australia, you name it. Even the Ukraine and Russia are imposing sanctions on Western companies. Nobody knows the impact of those sanctions. So what's sanctionable? Well, cargoes, certain cargoes, oil, number one, coal, fertilizer, and in some instances, with regard to the European Union, steel. What else? Certain activities, really relating to the financial world. And finally, persons, companies, vessels that are designated as what's known as SDNs. And no one can do business with them if they're such designations. So, let me give you an example of the confusion. Europe came out on August 10th and declared that with regard to coal, fertilizer, you cannot transport those two cargoes to any third country if you have a European nexus. The United States sanctions policies say, well, you can't transport those cargoes into the United States. That makes sense. But Europe took a position which was really strange and out of the blue because there was no period built in for all those vessels out there that were already loaded with coal and fertilizers. And all of a sudden, European-based insurers, vessels that were flying European flags, had no insurance coverage, could not fly a European flag. You can imagine the havoc that wreaked all over the globe. So my point is, unfortunately, there's a lot of education that needs to take place. Educating the politicians, educating people about the shipping industry. And that's how we have to come in together. I want to give you another example. I read just yesterday morning 2 reports, one from Reuters, one from Tradewinds, and they were making a big deal about a Greek-based owner who was, quote-unquote, illegally carrying a cargo of coal to a non-European country, this country being Turkey. So that Greek owner, it's really an operator, is established here in Greece under a law that's called Law 89, which means that you're a foreign company doing business in Greece, to state it loosely, okay? Bottom line is, there is no European nexus. So on its face, that is not a violation. Yet the press is portraying it as it being a violation. The only thing that's a violation in that circumstance is if there's a European-based insurer, whether it's a P&I club or a hull underwriter, that is covering that vessel. That particular voyage could not be covered if there's a European insurer, okay? So at the end of the day, there's so much confusion and complexity with today's sanctions that we're not all together in this. And the final thing I'm going to say is, guess what's happened as a result of all these sanctions? What are all these operators, whether you're a vessel owner, manager, charterer, bunker provider? No one has compliance departments. No one has people who have the necessary expertise or knowledge, nor do they have the systems that they need to track vessels, to check deep dives into knowing your client and knowing your client's client. And what does that result in? Well, when Europe comes around to deciding how they're going to enforce breaches of sanctions, God knows what punishments will come down. At least one thing, with OFAC, we always knew what was going to happen. So there's been a tremendous disruption, in my view, in the shipping world because of these very confusing and complex sanctions. Thank you.
So it seems that deglobalization has started through sanctions regimes, from what you're describing. Thank you for sharing this view. It's disturbing indeed. George Margaronis, many outsiders are currently fascinated by the solid profits that the shipping industry is currently enjoying, but are largely oblivious to the crippling operational difficulties that these same companies suffered during the last couple of years, mostly as a result of the COVID pandemic. Just as the pandemic seems to subside, and I hope I won't have to eat my words, at least President Biden agrees with me, The Ukrainian war created a new major operational complication, and we heard part of it through Dan. But you are the man on the wheel, I mean, you're actually managing this. So can you please give us a picture of how this situation has affected logistics and operations at the level of a shipping company?
Okay, thank you. I couldn't agree with what you said more. I think the sanctions and the way they've been enforced, or they're not enforced, but have been spelt out, are extremely unclear. We've had 6 layers or 6 different sanctions introduced since the invasion. Some are clearer than others. There's sanctions against dealing with certain entities, which require expansive research into your trading partner, the shipper, the receiver, the terminal. It's really chaotic. It's been a real challenge for us and for most shipping companies. To add to that, I would say that initially when the war broke out, there was a lot of volatility in war risk insurance premiums. That was challenging as well. And you know, but looking at the bigger picture, I think, you know, for shipping, that's been more of an inconvenience than you know, what's going on in the world around us. You know, these are dramatic times that we're faced with, and you know, checking and going through this quite painful, you know, counterparty check is really a secondary consideration. You know, we have faced a lot of challenges. These have included things like having Russians and Ukrainian crew on the same ship, thankfully without consequence. Lack of Ukrainian seafarers, because a lot of them have sought to return home, and those returning back to active sea service have not been able to. You know, a whole load and wide array of challenges. I'd say on a more macro level, I think the blockading basically of Ukrainian ports has been a major reason for concern. The Ukraine is a considerable grain exporter, also a primary exporter of fertilizers, coal and steel. And that has upset trading patterns quite considerably for our colleagues who are more prevalent in the dry cargo space. We're less so. And then I'd say, you know, also minor things like some of the shipbrokers that we've dealt with in the past not being able to deal with certain charterers because they're sanctioned entities. And finally, the volatility in bunker prices has been quite phenomenal on the back of the invasion. You know, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of challenges, a lot of time and effort and hard work has gone into just making sure we're on the right side of the law. And, you know, we're trying to follow things as closely as we can. You know, as I said, in June, the 6th round of sanctions was imposed, which now include the fact that as of December 5th, if I recall correctly, there'll be no more imports into the EU of Russian crude, and I think it's February the 5th, which is for crude for oil products. Now, all this is going to make the situation even more messy, because what that does, and you know, my concern is that what happens in these types of situations is that more creative, ingenious, and let's say adventurous owners will look to find ways to circumvent these sanctions and these prohibitions. We've seen it done with Iran. We've seen it done with Venezuela. I'm sure this will happen with Russia. We're already seeing it happen. Ship-to-ship transfers of cargo, blending of Russian cargoes with other cargoes, and rebranding these as non-sanctioned cargoes. And this will become much more prevalent going forward, I think, beyond the deadlines that are set out by the EU. From our perspective, it's unfortunate that we're enjoying such a good market, particularly in tankers, on the back of other people's miseries, because it is a little bit of an anticlimax to what would have otherwise been quite a happy time for most tanker owners. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a very difficult environment within which to operate. Whether we like it or not, energy was, is, and is likely to remain a key component of any security, economic, or social analysis of our world. In fact, I would argue that the recent increased volatility is partly due to the current and expected changing mix of energy resources, and if I'm correct, more volatility will probably ensue. Energy is one of your main research interests, and I would like, therefore, to ask you, again, for your big picture views on how these geopolitical tremors are affecting the energy transportation landscape or the energy outlook. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's historic what is happening. Let me first start by saying I read sometimes when I hear about Ukraine, the first war in Europe since World War II. That's obviously not true. We had the Greek Civil War that lasted until 1949. We had the Turkish invasion in Cyprus. We had the wars in Yugoslavia in the 1990s. So that is not the historic thing. There's a war in Europe again. But what is really historic is what this is going to have, what effect this is going to have on energy relations in Europe, because what I'm seeing is a historic decoupling on the energy front between Western Europe, the West, and Russia. And that's not going to change. It is happening. The war in Ukraine started in February 24th, if I remember correctly. So not that long ago. And at that point, the European Union was importing 50% of its energy needs. 40% of its natural gas came from Russia, and about 25% of its oil from Russia. The U.S., talk about a tale of two cities. 0% when it comes to gas and about 3% when it comes to oil. So radically different environments. And this was a shock. Immediately, we're talking changing of routes and strategies. Nord Stream 2 canceled. It was almost completed, and now it's canceled. The original Nord Stream is not faring any better. So already two huge sources of Russian natural gas to Germany and Europe are out of the picture. The EU sets a goal to cut Russian gas by 2/3 by 2024. Let that sink in. We're talking about breakneck speed. And inevitably, there is going to be a gap between demand and supply because, as everyone knows in this room, when it comes to energy routes, energy infrastructure projects, they cannot happen, they do not happen overnight. TAP, 10 years. From conception to nice little ceremony, 10 years. So this cannot happen overnight. So you want to do hydrogen, takes a decade. You want to go nuclear, probably takes 15 years. New renewables, several years. You can't do this automatically. So that's a big problem. Nevertheless, I am impressed because I do see a lot of things happening, all things considered, very fast. The sanctions, maddening. What's worse, I think, is sometimes they're vague. They're vague. You don't really understand necessarily what they're saying. And yet, 27 countries coming with 6 rounds of sanctions, that's impressive seen from a political and not shipping light. Okay. But here's what I'm seeing. Mr. Koumoutsakos said new FSRUs. An FSRU is the quickest, it's relatively inexpensive, and the quickest way to import LNG. We're going to get 3 in Greece. new infrastructure projects. We have more LNG from around the world, especially the United States. The United States now is pretty much exporting all that it can, but also new buyers, Qatar, Australia, East Africa, new places. More lignite and coal, not good for the environment, but that's also happening. Less consumption as a goal, and maybe some rationing, I hope not, but I cannot, and new routes. Self-sufficiency when it comes to Europe is not a realistic goal overnight. It's probably not a realistic goal, period. But between infrastructure projects, FSRUs, new buyers, rationing, and various other things, and all the new deals to import, I think that all things considered, this is an impressive, albeit expensive for the consumers, effort. Let me conclude by mentioning two specific routes of new energy for the European Union. One, not going to repeat because Mr. Koumoutsakos was actually said it all. The southern, and we'll save some time, the southern corridor, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline tap. There's also TANAP, the Trans-Anatolian natural gas pipeline. So the southern corridor is something that can happen. The IGBs of this world, all the other, these are infrastructure projects that are now happening much more quickly. But there's one other region that has natural gas, and it's the East Med, the Eastern Mediterranean. The U.S. Geological Survey says that estimates that it has 122 million cubic feet of gas and 1,689 billion barrels of oil. So no doubt there's energy in the East Med. And now the question is which infrastructure projects are viable to get it to Europe. And the one that's getting the most publicity is the East Med pipeline. And it reminds me, and I'm almost going to end, but it reminds me of a story of a famous 19th century wit and author, American author, Mark Twain. And a newspaper published his obituary. And Mark Twain was in Europe, and he sent a telegram. Today he would have tweeted, and he said, "Reports of my early demise are greatly exaggerated." And this might be happening with the East Med. It dies, and then it's back on the agenda because the geopolitics are changing. Will it be built? Maybe not. But the politics are there, the geopolitics are there, and what I can say with a degree of certainty is that some infrastructure projects in the East Med, maybe LNG facilities in Egypt, maybe something, another pipeline, something, though, is going to happen. Why? Because the geopolitics of energy in Europe have changed after the war in Ukraine. Let me conclude. In a recent speech, President for life, I guess, Putin said in Asia. Good luck with that. That's probably accurate. There are ramifications. We are witnessing within less than a year a historic energy decoupling between Western Europe, Europe as a whole, and Russia. And this is truly historic.
Thank you for that. I'll go back to Dan. You gave us an excellent description of the sanctions complexity. I won't call it a regime anymore. They have sanctions, that is. They have also a significant and direct impact on international trade by imposing limitations that distort free market. We've seen caps on oil prices that create some awkward twists. Can you please shed a bit more light on how sanctions are affecting commodities trading?
Sure. And thank you for bringing that point up. So this is a novel sanctions approach that the group of 7 countries, of which Europe is an ancillary member, I believe, has come up with this idea, led by the United States, to have a price cap on Russian oil. And the purpose is, and this is where the word sanctions comes in, there is an idea that they want to avert high price spikes for fuel, while at the same time limiting the profit that Putin can make off the sale of his oil. So, novel, because if you think about it, it's a pretty good idea without banning completely the transfer of Russian oil. Okay? It allows it to actually be transported. Now, in order to do that, what the G7 countries are contemplating is there's going to be a system where the supplier of the oil has to attest, okay? And I'm going to come back to that, because Mr. Margaronis, I believe, mentioned this point of people who have been able to circumvent sanctions. So remember that word. The suppliers have to attest that they have purchased the oil at or below the price cap. And they have to submit a written attestation to their insurers, to their banks, to all their third-party service providers. Well, as we found out with sanctions against Iran and Venezuela and others, there's a lot of fraudulent documentation going on out there. So nobody knows yet how that is going to be enforced. Who's going to police that? Luckily, for us insurers and others involved third-party service providers in the industry, the United States is taking the position that as long as you got that attestation and it looks valid on its face, you're okay. But we're going to want to know where that attestation came from. And that puts a huge burden on vessel owners, vessel charterers, and other operators. So, and hot off the press, I just read about this right before we started to talk. Remember I was telling you about the August 10th European kibosh on coal and fertilizer? Well, guess what? Europe came out today and said, well, no, we're going to change that. Now you can transport coal and fertilizer to undercapitalized third countries.
How do you define that?
How do you define that? There's no definition. I mean, this is just a perfect example of all the confusion that's going on with sanctions. So, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. George, both as in your capacity as very senior broker beforehand and as your current capacity as running a shipping company, you have a colossal experience on knowing, who is selling which commodity to whom, through which channel. I know it's a very broad question, and we're gradually running out of time, but I would welcome your comments on how the trading of some key commodities have changed under this current picture described.
Sure. So basically what's happened is the Russians are exporting their crude to other countries at a cheaper price than they were previously. That's really all that's happened. So the trade flows have changed from oil being imported from Russia to the EU to that same crude being imported into countries like China, like India, even the Middle East. And this is the reality, right? Yes, it's sold at considerable discounts to Brent. In the past, it was in the region of about $10 a barrel. It's now more like 30. But the irony is that this same crude, which is being sent to India, for example, is being refined in India and re-imported into Europe as products. That's hardly a very effective way of punishing Russia for their invasion of the Ukraine. So, if we talk about products, it's a similar situation. The products that, and we've not got a full-out ban on imports into the EU. This is coming in December and February, respectively. So, these sanctions, in my view, they're just not working. It's too easy to circumvent these sanctions. It's way too easy. And this idea of a cap, I know it was Mrs. Yellen who thought of it. God knows what she was thinking. Because I can tell you, in the day-to-day shipping reality, these things don't work. people will give you attestations till they're blue in the face that this oil that they're buying or selling is a cent cheaper than the floor or the ceiling that they're going to set out. And who knows how they're going to come about that ceiling? I have no idea. Is it going to be something that's like certain dollars per barrel or what? And no one knows. That's half the problem. People come out with all these measures on a political level, and I wonder if they ever consult with people who are actually on the front line of doing business in these sectors. I guess probably not. And if I can just close on something that's slightly different, I mean, the real bet here is do we in Europe have the stomach to go through a harsh winter, right, without support for the Ukraine waning? Because that is the real concern. The politicians are out there, they're selling, Ukraine is a good cause. And yeah, we're all behind it and super enthusiastic for now. But if you have your electricity turned off, yeah, how supportive are you going to be of that cause? And how responsive are your local politicians going to be to that Ukrainian cause? Sorry, if their support starts to wane. So, Mr. Putin is he's an autocrat. He doesn't need to be re-elected. Our Western politicians do. And that is, for me, the biggest challenge that we face now. Thank you.
That's a very solid point. I fully agree. We're a bit pressed for time, but I think I need to ask a last question. I'll go back to Michael. As Mr. Koumoutsakos mentioned before, he made already a reference to Alexandroupolis. And for the non-Greeks in this room, you may have heard Alexandroupolis is a port in the northeast of Greece. It is gradually being transforming into a regional energy hub with significant LNG-related infrastructure, both for local and also for exporting this gas further north. But for certain, this port is probably has seen the most important change the last few quarters or years in the region. And the U.S. has certainly underlined the strategic importance of this hub. So I would very warmly welcome your comments on how Alexandroupolis is changing the balance, if you like, in the region.
Okay, thank you for that. The first thing I'll comment on is the MDCA. So the Mutual Defense Cooperation Agreement that we added some sites. In the big scheme of things, it didn't change a whole lot. I mean, at the end of 5 years, when it goes indefinite, there's still a 2-year notification to withdraw, which we've always had that for the last 30 years. But what it's done is it's sort of put a long-term perspective, especially for U.S. policymakers back in Washington, and is allowing us to do investments into joint infrastructure that can be beneficial to both the Greek and U.S. Alexandroupolis is one of those locations that was added to the site. The U.S. military has priority access to the port. How is that defined? I'm not really sure. I don't think there is a definition for that. But what has happened is over the course of the last 9 months since the war started, I think Peter mentioned earlier that 90% of the world's goods go via shipping. Well, I can guarantee you that 99% of the world's military hardware goes via ship. And so we have had 7 very large ships go into Alexandroupolis and move a substantial amount of equipment. That equipment has gone all the way north to Finland. It has gone to Turkey and every country in between. So we would not have been able to reinforce the eastern flank of NATO to deter Putin if he had any additional aims at the onset of his invasion of Ukraine to go into a NATO country. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have that down. But it's not just the U.S. In addition to the U.S., the Italians have had 3 ships come in. The UK have had 2. French, French, Portugal, and Spain have also had ships come in. And all of them have used that to move their equipment to support their battle groups that are up in Bulgaria and Romania. and elsewhere. So it's extremely important to the alliance and from a military perspective. But the future of Alexandroupoli is not going to be based on the military shipments that are coming through. It's going to be based on economics and other shipping that will come through. We can move equipment to the Bulgarian and Romania border approximately 4-6 days faster going through Alexandroupoli than we can taking the ship up into the Black Sea. And that's going to have value and an economic benefit to Alexandroupoli, which is going to make it useful. And the rail lines and the line haul highways that we're using to ship the military equipment are just as well suited to commercial goods. And so not only energy, but also I think it's going to be, even for Chinese goods, it's going to be the extension of the Silk Highway into Central and Northern Europe. It's much more efficient than going to any of the ports in the western part of the Mediterranean. And I would like to highlight just for the group here, since George brought up the Ukraine aid, the U.S. is very appreciative of the aid that Greece has provided to the Ukraine. It was timely, it got there when they needed it, and it was critical equipment that was needed. And you combine those two together, and that facilitated Ukraine's early defenses before a lot of other aid was flowing in there. So on behalf of the U.S., we greatly appreciate the efforts that Greece has done to support Ukraine. Thank you.
And thank you. I would have a number of other points I would like to discuss, but I think we're pressed for time from the frantic messages I'm receiving from the other end of the room. So I hope, I certainly leave wiser from this discussion. I hope you were able to learn a few new information about how geopolitics are affecting the maritime and the energy industry in the region. Thank you very much for contributing your vast experience in this. And I guess the floor is yours. Thank you.
Very much. Thanks to all the panelists. Thank you to the moderator. So this concludes the first day of our conference. You're more than welcome to stay outside for coffee and networking, but we're waiting for you tomorrow morning at 9:45 to begin with our next panels and speakers. Thank you very much.